science and football, how do you see this moving forward over the next few years in terms of the expansion on graduate schemes?
Okay, I think it comes from doing research for my talk today, where there's a lack of consensus in guidelines to help people in sport to decide when players should be coming back from sport, etc. And I think it's all very well talking about it, but a lot of the studies go back to 2005 already, that's saying they lack agreement. It's now 2012 and we still don't have those guidelines. So it's all okay for us to stand up and say we lack these things. I think the next stage should be that we should actually be putting consensus statements together, where you're having people that have perhaps got experience within the field, and we can target certain areas so that over the next few years or decade, whatever it's going to take, we need to sit down and say, let's address this hamstring, let's address the ACL, let's address whatever else it is, but rather than talking in general terms, I think we need to be a lot more specific. And that's where graduate programs still can come in, because then you can have research that's ongoing on the back end of what was decided at whichever year's Congress you're dealing with, and make it a theme rather than a general thing, where we can then come up with guidelines. So you can issue those to clubs at whatever level it is, and saying these are the criteria that we expect, either if it's on-field provision of emergency medicine, or if it's things like how do you get someone back from a simple hamstring injury.
So would you say a scheme like this would be setting guidelines for the future, would be creating a whole new way of looking at football?
I think if we want to move beyond the general lectures and talks and nice, and you come in and listen and think, okay, well that's thought-provoking, I'll take away one or two ideas, we need to move forward with it. And I think if you want to establish yourself within the industry as a trendsetter or a leader, what we need to be doing is saying, okay, let's identify those individuals within our sport, within sport particularly, that may be able to help us to set some of these consensus guidelines, that instead of us relying on the Australians or South Africans, we can then do something that's home-based and saying this is our experience and this is what I think we should be doing.
Would you say there could be a wider range of attendees, or is there currently a diverse mix of people who are involved in the scheme?
I think it's one of the things that have impressed me is the diversity, where you all split up the lectures again from psychologists and sports scientists, performance, even bringing the coaches in, which is unique in certain aspects, where you're then bringing the coaching staff, and then hopefully through interaction, through them listening to the various talks, get to appreciate what happens on our side of the fence, and not just purely from a coaching side. So I'm impressed and happy with the array of it. And I don't know how you solve it. The problem is that all the psychological lectures are in one setting, and all the physios in another thing. So again, you're subdividing the groups rather than trying to make it more interactive, and perhaps make keynote speakers where everyone attends as a group, and then they split off into their various specialities so that they can then go and fine-tune on that. But I think we need to stress the multidisciplinary approach, and instead of people working as individuals within their specialisation or their speciality, they can work together.
Why do you think an organisation like this is essential for the progression of science in football?
I think part of our problem in football is that we don't have enough time, because we're involved every weekend, to go out and to meet colleagues. We literally talk to them for 5 minutes before a kick-off and afterwards. And I think the amount of knowledge that's within football itself is tremendous, and we're not harnessing all of that expertise. And it's conferences like this which bring people together. I know it's time out on a Sunday and Mother's Day. I've still got to pay for that, by the way. I think that's important, that we're willing to share. And the more people willing to share, hopefully you will get information back from them. And I find it tremendously networking with other colleagues within the football world, so that when I go up there to the next home match, that we talk to them, we get on, and you've broken the ice literally. And well, I've always believed that if you're willing to share, people are willing to share with you. So it's certainly start by giving before you can take.
What do you think of the day so far? How the lectures have gone, and how people have reacted to the lecturers?
I think my one negative criticism of it is that in my talk, maybe I got there wasn't someone to introduce me and to set up and say this is what it is. We had fairly loose guidelines. In some of the sort of top-end conferences, they would say, right, you've got 5 minutes to go, buzzer off questions asked. Maybe a bit of a panel thing afterwards, direct questions. You have someone that's looking after that particular session that can steer it, and then maybe lead with questions or whatever else. So that, I'm being harsh perhaps, but that is my only criticism. But apart from that, the talks have been excellent. I've enjoyed certainly the two that I've attended so far this morning.